I'm Josh Lipton, and I'm here with Steve Jurvetson. He's managing director of DFG, and he's turned his office here into a virtual space museum. So, Steve, just to begin with, how did this sort of interest for you start in space technology?
Sure. When I was a young kid, I went to space camp. Unlike band camp, I went to Johnson Space Center and learned a little bit about that. But it was a latent interest. I think a lot of kids my age had interest in the Apollo program, given our age and what was going on at the time. But then when we invested in SpaceX here at DFJ, I became more fascinated with this modern era and a rejuvenation, frankly, and a new ray of hope that there's going to be a new space program, a new sense of exploration.
Let's talk about some of the artifacts,
Sure.
Steve. You were kind of pointing out a few of them. How about these, which were actually on the moon?
Yeah, this is quite amazing. This is Jim Irwin's flown headset on Apollo 15. This would be the thing, they call it the Snoopy cap, because it kind of looks like Snoopy ears, that they wear under the glass helmet when they're jumping around the moon and driving the rover. And so that was used on the moon in Apollo 15. This item was brought back by Commander Gene Cernan in Apollo 17. It's a temporarily used armrest that when you're landing on the moon, you're actually in a standing position, and this held their arm in place. So it was detachable because you only use it at that one time, and so he brought it back as a souvenir. Had he not done that, it would have been left behind forever, crashed into the lunar surface. This can give you a peek into what our solar system looked like 4.2 billion years ago and what might have been a planet. It has since come back to land on Earth. And what you see here is a mix of metal and gem-like stones that was a differentiated mantle and core of a planet-sized collision that occurred 4.2 billion years ago, breaking rock and metal apart, and then it cooled over millions of years in a way you couldn't do on Earth. This is the prototype build of the Apollo 11 flag right before we're landing on the moon. You can see the photo reminding you what it looked like with Buzz Aldrin. And it was a last-minute thought. They had not planned on a flag, and they had no room for it in the lunar lander. So it detaches at this midpoint. It folds at this hinge. That thing telescopes. But as you can tell from the way it droops, it doesn't quite sit perfectly, and that's why it looks like it's waving in the wind. It was such a last-minute effort, it had to fold up because they just strapped it to the leg of the lunar lander. This was first flew in 1963. It still flies today. So if they were to make a complete engine, they would sell it because it's quite an expensive engine. And it has powered many of the spacecraft from the Apollo era through the present day, taken satellites to every planet of our solar system. And it was the first engine that actually had the bold step of running liquid oxygen down through these tiny pipes and back up again to keep this bell from melting. These are from the Russian Mir. The Russian program is fascinating because it is like an alien language in spacecraft in many ways. Their design mentality is just so different. And they also just keep reusing things over and over again. Literally, they'll pull stuff out of spacecraft and fly it a second time. Or in this case, Mir was their early space station, and this was the manual docking control system. But now on their International Space Station, currently flying, one of these exact same items is up there because it's the backup.
Steve, thank you for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Question obviously we get here a lot in this community, whether there's another bubble. And I talk to other VCs, your colleagues, and a lot of them will say no, that this time is different. Is that your perspective?
Well, it depends on which part of the economy we're talking about. If we mean technology in general across all of its myriad areas, we're seeing more diversity to this boom than ever before. Meaning, it's not like it's just a set of .com kinds of companies that are come and go. We have incredible breakthroughs going on in synthetic biology, agricultural biotech, robotics, drones, rockets, cars. It's as if all of these different industries that weren't available for entrepreneurship and venture capital are now becoming software-driven businesses. And when they become software-centric businesses, if you will, the pace of innovation feels like that of a computer company, and it is a wonderful time. So any one sector may come and go, have its booms and busts, but the average, it seems to us it's part of that ongoing megatrend that technology is sort of innovating and revolutionizing every industry.
Start just with your current portfolio of investments, because when you look at that, Steve, one theme that very quickly jumps out is Elon Musk. As Kayla mentioned, you were an early backer of Tesla. In fact, you were the first one to own a Tesla. Also a big fan of SpaceX. Why the big bet, Steve, on Elon Musk?
He's a remarkable human being. He may go down in history as one of the most important entrepreneurs in U.S. history, up there in the pantheon of Steve Jobs and Thomas Edison and others. And when you meet him, you realize he thinks differently. He sees the world and he sees the future in a very clear way, and he executes unlike anyone we've seen. So whether it's Tesla, SpaceX, Solar City, which he helped form with his cousins, and 2 other startups before that, including PayPal, the guy's had more success in more industries than any entrepreneur I know of on the planet. He's a remarkable person. And so I think we'd probably want to support just about anything he did.
And let's switch gears. We'll talk about Tesla and just the broader electric car industry, Steve. You've been a big fan from the beginning. When you think, though, about the challenges of that industry, whether we're talking about price or the relatively limited driving range. How do you, as an investor, think about those challenges, Steve?
Sure. There's, with any major change, when you think about moving from internal combustion engine cars burning gasoline to a fully electric future, which is inevitable, that all vehicles be electric, it's not going to be easy. And the biggest challenge, I think, facing the industry has been price and range. And so Tesla's taken one approach to solving that, which is start with a car people really want, the best car you could possibly buy, and address the range issue by giving it a much longer range than any prior electric vehicle. So I've driven electric vehicles now for 6 years. I haven't needed to charge anywhere but home because I start with a full tank, if you will, and I make a loop, and each day when I get home, I haven't driven the full range. And so it turns out when you actually drive one of these vehicles, you realize range isn't a problem. It's a perceived problem. And then they're addressing that with superchargers around the country and around the world that says if you really want a road trip across country, we got that solved. You can do that for free. So then it comes to price, and that's going to be a slower story playing out over 5 to 10 years where it eventually becomes affordable for all. Today, a Model S at the entry range costs the same as a Ford Taurus if you own it for 7 years and look at all the costs, savings and energy, almost no maintenance. And so that's starting to get mid-range, and then eventually with what they call Gen 3, it should be an affordable car for all. Can't speak about financing events that haven't happened yet, but personally, I think the company is spectacular, and that valuation actually isn't nearly as high as it should be for the company if you wait just a few years. The reason is the following. They have over $5 billion worth of business, billion with a B, for a private company. They've been profitable 6 years in a row. They look to be the future of the U.S. space program, not only for bringing cargo to the space station, but the future of carrying our astronauts to space. They intend to colonize Mars. This is a company that, if it realizes its aspirations, truly it will be a breathtaking example of American entrepreneurship. So you compare that to an average internet company that commands a similar valuation, and you might say, which seems like it's going to change the world for the better.
But SpaceX isn't an internet company. It needs a lot of capital, Steve. And how much capital does it need to continue investing, and what's the availability of that capital from the investing community with some of its commercial development so long off still at this point?
Well, that's a great question. So to date, the company has been funded first by Elon Musk personally, which is quite remarkable, then by NASA contracts that actually are good business for NASA. They get launch services from SpaceX at a lower cost than their alternatives, and so that's paying the bills for the first few years. Today, it's largely commercial customers, people who want to launch satellites into orbit, and they pay large sums to do that. So it's quite a lucrative business, hence, again, profitable for 6 years implies they're generating cash, not losing cash. Then looking to the forward for big and ambitious programs, there's reasons why, again, space programs, if you want to put astronauts in space, or customers, if you want to put satellites in space, are paying as they go. So you take that coupled with, frankly, an investor community, including folks like ourselves, that are very enthusiastic about investing. This company has never put together an investment pitch, right? They've never put together what every other company does, which is a solicitation for investment. What they get is continuous inbound offers from third parties that say, I'd like to please invest in the company.